You can also try following your class on YouTube.
Good morning, how are you?
Good morning.
Yeah, fine, thank you.
We're about to start the class. How's your week? Plug in power. This. So today I'm using my phone, so I will only let you know that I'm here. Then I will turn off the video, then you can learn. But I expect all of you to be on video. Whenever I call on you to talk, you must turn on your video and respond to the question or to the contribution I want you to make. So last week we introduced our class, and today we will just proceed without wasting time. I requested that you go out and do something. Did we do that assignment? Kevin, where are you?
Yes.
Did you also share with your classmates the course outline?
Yes, I did.
And I hope everyone received the course outline. Why are you in darkness?
Let me put on my video. It's the Luma, I mean, lighting.
Oh, okay. And I also want to make something very, very clear here to those of you who last week were talking about sharing a screen or sharing. I will not use or share PowerPoint because I am not making a presentation. I am teaching. And if there is any document or any handout that I wish for the students to have, I will always send it. Whether we will have it on the classroom platform or we will have it through email, I will always send additional material that I believe the students need, but I'm not going to share a screen or I'm not going to use a PowerPoint for teaching, which then makes some students think they can roam around, they can do all sorts of things and use PowerPoints to learn. You cannot learn from PowerPoints. Not at your level. Because those who use PowerPoints to learn anything, it's in a workshop and you're just using points that already most people know. And so you're only explaining your own self. Yeah, I'm not explaining myself. I am teaching things that the syllabus requires of you to learn. So you must know that we will be having a classroom. You will be participating like in a physical setting. You'll be making your notes. And we will also be recording this presentation so that you follow up. If you miss out, you can listen to the recording, but I would wish that you make your own notes as we have the classes. And not just for this class, for your own benefit. Make your notes. Don't be fooled that because no one is seeing you and because this is internet enabled, you can do your stuff while the class is going on and then use PowerPoints to pass an exam. You are not here to pass an exam. You are here to learn. The world out there is not just about having a clean degree certificate or a first or a second class. It is about performance, it's about competence. You will not become competent by just reading notes to pass an exam. So I want that to be very clear for my class. And if you are teachable, if you have a teachable spirit for any other class in the university or elsewhere where you learn in this world, whether you are learning online or physically, make sure you interact within the classroom and with information and knowledge that is elsewhere. So having said that and made it very clear, I hope that we will no longer Wasonga, can you add people who are waiting? Are you there with us, Wasonga? There's several students who are waiting to join.
Yes, we are adding them. Dr.
Okay. Admit all. Okay. All right, so I'd wish us to start by looking at what we were to do last week. And I will pick people randomly to share the information they got. Then we can move. Alex, Syria, can you tell us about the process model that you encountered and what you have learned about it? Alex, are you there? Can you unmute? Alex? Clinton Ochieng, can you tell us? I want to assume Alex is not in class. That is why he's not talking. Clinton, can you unmute and tell us what process model you encountered, which one you encountered, and what you have discovered about it? Clinton Ochieng, are you in class? Clinton, are you in class? Eric, I can see you're in the natural state of things. Eric, can you tell us something?
Thank you. Through the Shannon and Weaver model.
Shannon
and yeah, Shannon and Weaver model.
Let me mute so that we hear you well without echo.
So
proceed. And kindly let everyone mute so that we can hear him.
according to this according to this model, which are actually tackled in this model of Shannon and Weaver. So the first one was talking about the sender, who is the originator of the message, about the encoder, one or the transmitter, who transmits the message into signals. So we also have the decoder, who are number 3. So this one gives the signal, which converts the signal into a message. So we also have the receiver. This one is the destination, the one who receives the message, the destination, where the message is focused to reach. Then we have the noise, which is actually the disruption of the process of communication. So according to this theory or the model of Shannon, so we have message communication starting from the sender and ending at the receiver. But now the concept of noise is introduced. One thing I'll discover about this model is that the model has the concept of communication. Example of Shannon and model communication, we have the person who was inventing the telephone, that was Thomson. So when he was inventing the telephone, he had his workmate. He had his workmate who they were working with. So Shannon and Thomson, he was called Thomson, called his workmate and told him, "Come here, I want to see you." But now the concept of noise was there. So the concept of noise during this call, it appeared to his assistant, whoever was working with. His message was, "Come here, I want to see you." But now the message, due to noise, the message was received as, "I want." The other part was omitted because of the noise. So, so I think that is the example that I came across when I discovered this, when I was researching about this Shannon and model means of communication. Yes, perhaps if I may have questions from Madam or the class. I think
Thank
for
you,
better understanding.
thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's a very good attempt, because you're encountering it for the first time. You've done a great deal. Kevin, what do you want to say?
Was asking about the concept of the feedback according to Eric's explanation. Since according to me, during the Shannon's model of communication, the concept of feedback has been tackled, which completes the loop of communication. Thank you.
Thank you very much. He overlooked the idea of feedback, and we know that without feedback, the communication process is incomplete. Even when it is one way, like in media settings, there's always feedback. There's always a mechanism for getting feedback. David?
Yes, Mwalimu. In the process in which he was communicating, I have not gotten it well. If I can try to give on my side.
Okay, you want to call, you don't say that you didn't get it well. You say I want to present additional information. And please go on.
Yeah. So
and just a minute,
to the
sorry, David, before Wasonga, are you in, so that we get, can you take a screenshot of these students? I like their backgrounds. This will speak volumes in our university website. You can see the background, Wasonga.
Yes, this is Eric Daktari. I'll do that.
Yeah, Eric, just do that. Are you seeing the background where they are? It's nice. It shows the Kenyan that we have here, how
Yes, please.
how our decision to use technology is something that is really brave.
Yes, that's very true, Dr. I'll request all of them to just maybe put their cameras on. We get a clean screenshot.
Please, guys, let's get a screenshot of your background so that we put it on the website. And we also use it to on our other social media platforms, the university official social media platforms.
Yes.
Good. All right, continue. Was it David? Please continue.
In this model, information source produces a message to be communicated out of a possible set of messages. Then the message consists of a written or spoken word. The transmitter converts the message into a signal suitable for the channel to be used. The channel is also a medium that transmits the signal from the transmitter to the receiver. The receiver reconstructs the message from the signal, and then the destination is the person to whom the message is intended. The model introduced concepts like noise, problems accepting the signal, and the need of maintaining necessary balance between the degree of uncertainty and uniqueness of the information. So here, for effective communication, the greater the noise in communication, the greater the need for building redundancy, which is the uniqueness of the information.
Thank you, David. Okay, I want us to move out of Shannon and Weaver. Anybody who did ecological? I mean, you all did, but anybody who wants to talk about the ecological model? And I want you to look at something, the progression of things as they changed over time, because I'll soon tell you how this happened. The history of communication is also tied to global development theories.
Yes.
Is that Kevin raising hand? No, there is let me see the hands that are up. Ellie. Kevin has been talking. Ellie, can you take us through?
Okay, I just did a little research about it because, okay, so in ecological
Ellie,
model.
can I tell you something? Can I tell you something? Moving forward, anywhere, wherever you're called upon to say something, don't apologize by making the audience think you have nothing to offer. When you say, I only did something small, you're telling us we don't have to listen to you. Just share what you have. And this is because that's why I told you this class is not about getting notes and passing exams. We are training you. Remember my first talk with you. We are training you to be someone out there, not just within the university. So whenever you're called upon, even if it is impromptu, don't apologize. Don't tell people I don't have much. Don't say this and that. Simply say it in the best way you can. Let them judge whether it was small or big. So proceed.
Okay, I have something big. Pardon me. Okay. In ecological model of communication, actually it's similar to the Laswell's model of 1948, and its key factors are who says what, in which channel, to whom, and with what effect. So I'll start with who. Who is the creator of the message, or the origin of the message, or the information. So in who, we have the origin, who picks up the information from a set of ideas. Actually, we find that information is basically set of ideas, or ideas rather, I can say. So you find that the who picks the idea that he or she wants to communicate, and then I'll move to say what. So I've said that who is the origin of the message, says what is the message itself, or the information. So after obtaining the information, the the who encodes it. Encoding is the process whereby the speaker or the sender transmits the ideas into an appropriate channel that he or she intends, that can be well understood by the receiver.
While talking, can we mute? Peter is unmuted. Peter, you're causing noise in class. Please mute your mic.
The channel is mainly the language that the sender chooses to use and the media that he decides to use. Okay, can I continue? So I was in whom? Whom is the consumer of the message, the receiver, the person to whom the message was intended to. Then to what effect?
Ellie, can you make it quick? Make it quick, because we just wanted to spend like 30 minutes on this sharing and then proceed with the class. Did we lose you? Nelly, did we lose you? Thank you very much. Can I have Wanjiko? Wanjiko, quickly, you have 3 minutes to tell us something. Wanjiko.
Me, Cindy Wanjiko, right?
Wanjiko, volume, your volume is very low. Please adjust.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Sorry. Can you hear me now?
I can, but it's very low. I don't know why.
Let me try adding. Sorry. 1 second.
As Wanjiko tries to sort out that, there's Meroka. Can we hear from Meroka and then I get back to Wanjiko?
Can you hear me now? Am I audible enough?
Yes, proceed. Still low, but we can hear.
I would like to speak about the Wesley and McLean's model.
So you're talking about the Wesley and McLean's model, yes?
So it was an adaptation from Newcomb's model of communication, and it also consisted of some concepts from Lewin's model. Basically, the model says that communication does not begin when a person starts speaking, but when a person responds to something from his or her surroundings. So the person must first receive message from the environment and then responds selectively to his object of orientation. For example, a man woke up in the morning and found that it was raining hailstones and he could not leave the house, but he had to get to work. Due to the rain, he had to call ahead and say that he cannot make it to work. So he responded to the rain by okay, sorry, let me rephrase that. The rain made the man not to go to work, but he had to communicate that to the rest of his fellow members by giving by communicating that through feedback. So something else is it can be applied in two contexts, that is interpersonal communication and mass communication. The difference between the two communications being the feedback. The feedback in interpersonal communication is direct and fast, and indirect and slow in mass communication. Yeah, that's what I found out.
Thank you very much, Wanjiko. I had Meroka. Meroka, are you still there? Can you proceed? Is Meroka there? Meroka? Okay. Barbara, please take us through. Barbara.
Okay, I'll be presenting on the Scrum model, and the Scrum model involves
Shram. Barbara, and to all of us, Shram
the
model.
Scrum model, it involves the encoding and decoding of messages, and it also involves the sharing of information between the receiver and the sender. And also found that in this model, both experiences are required. Okay, and when I was doing my research, also found out that there was a diagram, and in this diagram, I saw that if the circles do not meet, there's absence of such common experiences, which makes communication difficult. That means that there has to be experiences from both sides. And then also found out that there are limitations. And then the first limitation is that it is less linear and that it does not account for group discussion. Yeah, that's my research.
So much, Sophia. Thank you so much, Barbara. Then I want somebody who did the Shannon and Weaver. I mean, someone who can talk about the Shannon and Weaver model. And then the next person to talk about Barlow and Lessica. Bugwa, can you take us through the Shannon and Weaver model? Bugwa? Bugwa is not responding. Yes, Bugwa, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there, but I thought the first.
You don't know?
I thought the first presenter presented the Shannon and Weaver model.
Oh, which one now? Barlow and Lessica, sorry. Barlow and Lessica?
So the Barlow,
yes,
according to me, I found that it described the factors affecting the individual component in communication. So it focused on the encoding and decoding. So on the diagram, it had 4 components. That is the sender, the message, the channel, and the receiver. So according to Barlow, the sender and the receiver, for effective communication to take place, they must have these characteristics. So the first one was communication skill, which can be either good or bad. Then the attitude they have towards one another. Then there is the concept of the knowledge, in that when the sender and the receiver have familiarity of the subject, then the message will be communicated well. Then you have the social systems, which include the values, the rules, and religion, which may affect the communication of the message. Then lastly was the culture, in that people from different culture may have people from different culture may affect the message due to their differences. Then there was a factor which affect the message. So the factor which were affecting the message was the content, in that the content is the message which is being communicated, Then the other part was the element. The element are the nonverbal beings which tag along the content. Then the treatment. The treatment is the conveyance of the message by the receiver. Then you have the structure, in that according to the way the message will be arranged, it will affect the effectiveness of it. Then you have the code, which is a message which can be sent as a language or a text. So on this model, on the side of criticism, I found out that it had no feedback concept in the model, and it did not account for noise or interference. Then it was found to be a more linear model of communication, such that it did not give the problem which may come from group discussion, where we have more than one source presenting the information at the same time. So that's my presentation.
Thank you so much, Bubwa. Because I want us to wind up on this discussion, Nduko and there's the other one also. What do you have to say? There's Nduko and Kiplagat. Say something quickly so that I conclude the session of discussion. We have Nduko and then we have Kiplagat. Is Nduko in? Kiplagat, can you?
Okay, personally, I want to take you back to the Wesley model.
Yes, Wesley's model.
Personally, I went ahead to highlight the advantages and the disadvantages of this model. So my question was, my question was that are these advantages and disadvantages relevant in this study?
They are very, very relevant. We are going to see that when I share with you what I have on them. But we don't have to dismiss the presentations made by students. It was good effort. So please proceed with the advantages and disadvantages.
So the advantages are that there is a concept of feedback in this model of communication. Secondly is that as the message comes from the environment, sensory field improve the message formation. The third one says that social and other factors are included in the objective of orientation. Then the fourth one is model can be applied in the interpersonal group communication as well as mass communication. Then the fifth one is the model is very descriptive. Then to the disadvantages of Wesley model of communication is that there are many variables for simple communication. Then the second one is that the model is only two-dimensional and does not explain multiple messages and complicated messages. Then the third one and the last one is that information can be modified while sending it from the sender to the receiver, as there can be noise, as that the model does not account for noise in the communication. That is it.
Thank you. Is Nduko there? Award, there was an award who was also waiting to talk. Award, what do you have to say? Award. Vinik.
Hello, hear me.
Okay, Kevin, what do you have to say? Your hand has.
And a question according on the Barros model of communication was asking whether we can term the characteristics
Sorry.
Was
You
asking
can.
whether
Uh-huh.
we can term the characteristics of the sender and receiver and the various models of communication as a disadvantage to it. Since for the effective communication, we can summarize it as for the effective communication to take place, the sender and the receiver must be on the same level in terms of communication skills, culture, language, yeah, so on and so forth. Yeah.
So you're asking if the model puts in place
Harakisha
as
Kaylee, story baadaye.
the communication. Now, who is that? Can we all mute? Can we all mute? We don't want to know what is happening in your background. Can you mute? Just go to your phone or your laptop and mute your microphone. And for your information, please don't do something crazy. We are going to make this recording public. So make sure your background is as quiet as possible. So, Kevin, you're asking whether the idea that the source and the receiver must have communication skills, they must have attitudes, knowledge, and social systems and cultures which are similar. Oh, who is this? Eric Wasonga or Eric, please mute that student for me. Mute them for me.
Okay.
Please mute the one whose phone is making noise for me. Okay.
Lisa.
Actually, it is not a disadvantage, Kevin. It is an advantage in the sense that for it to be truly effective, I'll give you an example. If we have, look at how COVID was treated in this country or in Africa generally. If COVID was as negatively impactful on our lives as it is in other countries that we have seen with the mass deaths and mass illness, and our people think that it is a fake news by the government to make money. So it doesn't matter what you tell them because the attitude is different. It doesn't matter what you tell them, they will still go on and do the things the way they wish to do because they don't believe what you're saying. The attitude is different. But if you have a similar attitude or perception, if I may use a different word, then you communicate better or you understand each other better. So all these things require to be similar, or at least you try to persuade the other person to agree with you in all these things so that you understand one another. If you know something that I don't know, the way you tell it to me will make us communicate or not, because I don't have the knowledge that you have. So all these things are not disadvantages, they're actually supposed to be advantages. And when Balo talks about the message having content, having certain elements, the issues of treatment, structure, and code, these are language-based or linguistic aspects of a message, which again makes people interpret things in one way or another. And the channel here, what to him is a channel is not the medium per se, like technology platform or like a letter, or like to him, the way I communicate to you, is it by touching you? Is it by smelling whatever it is in the environment? Is it by tasting it? So actually he has the clear concept of what a channel is, because if I have a message and I want to talk to you verbally, then you hear the message. So my message is transmitted to you verbally. If I have a message that I want you to see and I make a signal or a sign or an action, then that is how I want you to receive the message. If someone comes and touches your shoulder, what does that mean? If someone comes and explains that something is smelling awful or that there's a sweet aroma in the environment, what does that mean? So to him, he had a very basic understanding of the communication process, but which still applies to us to date. So it is not a disadvantage. Lavender, you came back. Okay, what do you want to say? Lavender, can you unmute and talk to us? If your hand is up, then it means you'll talk to us, or take it down. Vinik, please talk.
Yes, madam. I am going
Who is
to
this?
share on
Who is talking? Who is talking?
model. Yes. I'm going to share on resource model on how it works.
Okay, we cannot hear you well because for some strange reason, we cannot hear you, please, because for some strange reason, there are several echoes.
Madam,
please just let it.
Want to share
excuse me, excuse me, excuse me.
On how
excuse me, we cannot hear you. We cannot hear you, please. There are a lot of echoes, so we cannot hear you, please. Just hold it a little bit.
Excuse me, madam.
Yes.
I wanted to talk something about Shannon-Weaver model.
Proceed.
The concept of noise, I discovered that there were two types of noise. There was external noise and internal noise. In the internal noise is where the sender or the receiver makes a mistake when encoding or decoding the message. Like for example, when the sender makes a mistake when misspelling any of the letters in the message, or the receiver misinterprets the message. And in the external noise, I discovered that it is when the sender or the receiver cannot do anything about the noise. Like for example, when they are communicated through a phone, when the sender and the receiver communicated through a phone, and there is noise from cars, it makes the communication not to be effective. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can have this discussion for several hours, even days, because it's very interesting, but yet it's at the core of our understanding of communication. So we really have to spend some time on it. I'll request every one of you to make a complete write-up of the presentation, and then we will share on the classroom platform, which we will soon avail to you. So make sure your presentation is complete, do your research, and in doing your research, I want you to read, not just, this one I allowed you and asked you to look at, just Google it. But now I want you to use more advanced platform to get information. I want you to use Google Scholar. I want you to use ResearchGate. You can search for them online and register for ResearchGate, but for Google Scholar, you don't have to register. You just search on Google Scholar window, then you search, and then you get what you want. After you have been trained on the use of the library, online use of the library, you will also access several books on our library. so that you make the presentation more academic and write it up. I only need you to respond to the processes, and then we will look at them once you've done them. I want to say, as way of summing up the class for now, that when you look at the history of the world industrial development, we had the First World War, and then came the Second World War. After the Second World War, a lot of developments began to happen: reconstruction, industrialization, and movements or transfer of knowledge from what they called the North, developed North, to the Third World, or the world that was perceived as non-developed. Now, alongside this, because the war ended, as you're aware, in 1945, with the formation of the UN and all these things that happened, scholars began to look at communication differently. And historically, the earliest that we can talk about, as per your presentation, was Laswell's model in 1948. Now, Laswell developed his model in 1948. Then Shannon and Weaver developed the model in 1949. Schramm and Osgood, Schramm was not alone. He had someone else called Osgood. They developed their model in 1955. Gabner, 1956. Wesley and Maclean, 1957. Barlow and Lessica, 1960. Helix, 1967. And DeVito, 203. They're still growing scholarly work on understanding communication. So DeVito's model is 203, and Folger, 204. And there's also Kotler, which is very popular in marketing, but he also came up with a model in 1967, which was earlier, but there's a reason I did not mention it along that. So when you look at the communication, history of communication process, they reflect the understanding of a human society and interaction. They kind of show us how people understood what happened between and amongst them as they interacted with one another. So one was lineal, as we are going to see characteristics of communication. Initially, it was one way. That is what it means by lineal. So one way, I give you a message. I don't have to worry about whether you understood it well or not. For me, I've given you the message and I expect you to use it. But as time moved, they realized that people have inherent characteristics, people have inherent situations that interfere with the way they respond or even the way they communicate by sending the message. So they decided to dig deeper and find out what happens when a person who, for example, does not belong to your culture talks to you. Does it affect? And they discovered, yes, cultural differences affect how we communicate, because culture defines my behavior, it defines my belief system, it defines my values. All this I bring to the communications table. They also wondered, does anything physical interfere with communication? That is where somebody was talking about the experiment of the noise, that a message was received or misinterpreted because there was physical noise. So they realized physical noise is also an element that interferes with communication. And then they had other things like, does the person's current condition or state of mind interfere with communication? Yes, the emotions interfere with communication. The prevailing circumstances interfere with communication. So everything that interferes with communication, or what we call noise, is everything that interferes with you as a person, whether it is something impacting on you from the outside or within you. If you don't like somebody, for example, you wouldn't take positively whatever they say. So it is noise. Your attitude and perception towards that person, or towards the activity that is going on, or towards your own experience is noise. When you can look at something so negatively, another person will look at it so positively, because you have different frames of reference and you have different circumstances and you have different backgrounds regarding that particular event. If you meet somebody you have missed for so long and they were your friends, you react differently, your body reacts differently, and so you are happy. But when you meet somebody you hated and you didn't want to meet, your body reacts differently. So that's how I want you to understand this thing in simple terms, that whatever we are calling noise is everything that happens within the people involved in the communication process, and then everything that they know and have been exposed to in the outside world. It brings interference to the communication process. And we are going to see how that works. Now, the next thing that I want us to do is to look at what we call the purpose of communication, or the role of communication. Sorry, there are some people who need to be admitted. Sorry about that. Let me not talk about the role, because it will interfere with our flow of information. Let us look at the barriers first, the barriers to effective communication. Sorry about that. Let us look at the barriers to effective communication. So the first barrier is language barrier. Language becomes a barrier because it carries the message. And since it carries the message, if the message or the language used distorts the message, then language becomes a barrier. And how does it distort the message? You can use unfamiliar terms. You can also decide to select wrong words or choose wrong words to communicate a message. Or sometimes you have not decided. Sometimes it is just, as they say, a slip of the tongue. But the wrong word out of your mouth, or the wrong word in a letter or a document sent out, already carries the meaning of your message. So it becomes a barrier. And it can be on your end as a sender or on the other end as a receiver. So when you have different frames of reference, when you have different languages and even different levels of the language, then language becomes a barrier. If somebody was to speak to you in an unfamiliar language, like an ethnic language that you don't understand, then language becomes a barrier. If somebody was to write to you a message that has completely new words, or new, as we are used to, new jargon, then it becomes a barrier. Again, if somebody was to use words which in your own culture or in your own perception are wrong in terms of your interpretation of them, then language becomes a barrier. Then we have physical barriers. We have physical barriers. These are the physical noise. This happens to be the physical noise in the environment, whether there's a car that is hooting around you, whether there's a construction that is happening around you, including conditions within a room. If the room is too cold, or the sitting arrangement is uncomfortable, or there's poor lighting, all that becomes a barrier in communication, and we call them physical barriers. And then we have cultural barriers. We have cultural barriers, and I've already talked so much about cultural barriers in the sense that your belief system and the things that you have been, the knowledge that you've been exposed to makes you interpret things in one way or another. So if your culture is different from another person's culture and they are communicating with you, then there is going to be misunderstanding or miscommunication between you and the other person, because culture becomes a very significant barrier as we communicate. Then the other thing is attitude, which is related to culture, but not necessarily, you acquire your attitude from your culture, but it's not necessarily culture. So attitude is a very significant barrier in communication, because when you have certain thoughts and feelings about something or about someone, then the way you receive those messages, the way you send those messages are affected by your thoughts and feelings. So attitude becomes a barrier. And then we also have another barrier that is organizational. We call them organization structure barriers. And these organization structure barriers are also many, because within the organization, you have structures that are used to run the organization. So one of the things that becomes an organization structure barrier is technology. When we use technology, we believe that we are making life more efficient, we are making life more effective, but when there is overload in technology, then it becomes a barrier. When we cannot use technology appropriately, then it becomes a barrier. And again, within the organization, we have the leadership of the organization. Now, leadership, you learn in your management classes that leadership has different styles. You find a leader who is democratic. You also find a leader who is authoritarian or dictatorial. And then you must also find a leader who doesn't care. We call it the laissez-faire leader. Now, these three leadership styles impacts on how the organization communication happens. When you have a dictator in leadership, then communication is almost one way in the sense that people are afraid to talk. So it is downward. It is the leader who talks. Information moves downwards. You receive what the leader has said. You have no chance to speak your mind. You have only to receive what the leader wants, because a dictator is always right. And we say, we use the phrase that when you're in a dictatorship, the rules are only two. Rule number one, the boss is right. Rule number two, refer back to rule one, so that there are no other rules in engagement. So in a dictatorship, people are afraid to talk and express their views, and that has its own negative effects, as we are going to see the advantages and disadvantages of all this, of leadership style. Then you find a situation where the leader is democratic or participatory. When in a participatory environment, people are free to air their views, people are free to query things, people are free to contribute whatever they know towards the organization's activities, and that freedom allows for creativity and innovation. So there is movement of information to and fro. There's upward and there's downward and there's horizontal movement in a participatory environment where people know I can express my mind without feeling victimized or without fearing that I will be victimized. So you get that leadership structure affecting communication or being a barrier to communication in a dictatorship. But in a participatory model, then it allows for communication. But still, even in a participatory model, if there are no proper controls, if there are no proper checks and balances, irresponsible people can think that the leader is now weak and can start to create unnecessary parallel information. So there has to be a proper structure for participation so that people do not behave just the way they wish because there's freedom. Then we have the laissez-faire leader. Now the laissez-faire leader doesn't care, and so you do whatever you wish. There's no control, there is no authority, no express authority, and people can spread as much rumor as they wish, and people can say whatever they want without any control. Again, that is negative because where there is no control, things get out of hand. This is where you find people forming or coming up with cliques and cocoons where they talk, and the group dynamics comes strongly into play and displaces leadership, where people form gangs. Let me use the word gangs. So people can say things and nobody can verify because there's no leadership. People can take charge of things and nobody can know whether they are the ones who should be in charge or not. So a laissez-faire leader allows for too much rumor mongering that does not augur well for the organization. So I just want us to know, because I'll be sharing you the handout, leadership affects the organizational communication in a very impactful way, whether it is positive or negative. And then again, the other organization barrier is the question of the way the size of the organization and the way the organization is structured. If the organization is a big or a large organization, and like the University of Nairobi with several campuses, several schools, several colleges, if there is no proper structure in place, information can be delayed along the way. Information can be filtered along the way. Filtering means you have written a letter, for example, but someone decides not to forward the content as is. Somebody decides to doctor it. Let me use the word to doctor. So filtering is interfering with somebody's message along the chain of conveyancing. The way it is being transmitted to whoever is going to receive it, filtering can happen within that structure. Somebody can sit on your letter, for example, that you're waiting for response or feedback, but you don't get it because it was never taken to the right place. Then the other thing is that when the organization is also big in size, you find a lot of interference from people with various interests. When people have interest and there's information being transmitted, people can, again, whether it is moving up or moving downwards, interfere with that message because the size of the organization. But we have other avenues and other measures to deal with these barriers. And when you are able to deal with those barriers, then the problems of filtering and the problems of delays are eradicated. Then we also have, still within organizations, barriers. Just a minute. My power is trying to. So we also have the issues of time within the organization. The way time is used can also be a barrier in the organization. So basically what I have said right now is that the barriers to communication are both at the personal level between people in an interpersonal communication setup, but they are also at the organizational level because communication in the organization is so critical to performance and profitability. So when people cannot communicate effectively within the organization, then performance is interfered with. And you will see as you interact with the knowledge you're going to meet at the university, as you go out in the environment, and even in your homes, that communication is a very small aspect of human life, but it is the biggest. It's the biggest in terms of whether somebody succeeds or not. It looks small, but it is the biggest. Think about your family and how a small conflict in the family that arises out of a communication or miscommunication can create an everlasting feud, can create enmity, and people simply do not see eye to eye because somebody said something which somebody didn't like, and from there an argument erupted, and out of that argument some actions were taken, and out of that action now it continues and continues and festers until it is impossible to resolve. That is how communication affects our personal lives, and communication affects the organizational life. So we really have to be clear in understanding these barriers and how these barriers can interfere with many things in our lives. Then I want us to move to characteristics of communication. In looking at characteristics of communication, please just pay attention. Communication is a process. Communication is a process, as we have seen, because it is interaction between and amongst people who are involved in sending and receiving messages. The other characteristic is that communication is symbolic. How is it symbolic? We use the spoken and the written symbols as well as the non-verbal symbols as we communicate. Words are symbols. Whether you speak them or write them, they are symbols because they represent something. The word itself has no meaning. It is what we attach to the word that has meaning. That is what makes it a symbol. When you act in one way or another, or when you make a move using your body parts, they mean nothing until we attach something to them. So whatever we attach is what makes it symbolic. When you wave, I have seen your hands on the screen. So when I see your hand on the screen, we have generally agreed as a world that it means when somebody raises their hand, it means they want to make a contribution. So that hand becomes a symbol of you wanting to make a contribution. But it is in itself, it doesn't mean anything until we attach that meaning to it. So that is why it is symbolic. Then we also have communication as being contextual. Why and how is it contextual? There are certain rules that we apply as we communicate. There are social-cultural boundaries within which we communicate, so that within a certain context, you know what something means. And then again, in another context, you understand what that means. And all this is socio-culturally bounded. What can I say as an example? I just want to give you a simple example. What might look as a joke between friends will not be a joke between people who are not friends. You can meet your friend and call them names, and they will be laughing with you. You can meet your friend and even insult them, use insulting words, but they won't take it negatively. They could insult you back, but you are joking. But when a stranger or somebody you don't like or somebody you don't interact with in a positive way insults you, then it becomes a war because of context. That is how communication is contextual. How could he say that to me? There are things you can tell your mother or father. There are things you can't tell your mother or father. That makes communication contextual. So the way you communicate, the words you use, and how makes communication contextual. In your professional life, for example, you have a boss. If you are the junior, There are certain things you cannot say, even if the boss is so angry and is insulting you or is doing what, you remember the power arrangement. You remember that this person has power over me. So you look at the context and decide not to respond or decide to be subdued in your response because you know this person has power. Communication is contextual. The way we talk things is guarded, is bounded by certain structures, social-cultural structures. And then we have communication is purposeful. It has an objective. There's nothing that you say and imagine it has not it doesn't have some specific objective to achieve. Even when you post, I know you are a posting generation. You are a generation who wakes up and posts things. Not all of you will do that, but I know majority of you. Yes?
Serious.
Yes? Hello? Hello? Eric, please, can you mute them? What is happening, you guys? What are you doing? Why are you interrupting the class? How many are there here now? 185. And then who is unmuted? Okay. Okay, let's go back to where we were. So communication has a purpose and a very specific purpose. And I was just giving you the example. When you put your picture out there and nobody is liking, why do you feel bad? Because you wanted to be liked. So when nobody is liking, you feel bad. And even when you say, it's just for me, I'm doing it for me, you're not doing it for you. There's an objective you're trying to achieve. Whether the objective is obvious or it is not obvious, there's always an objective. There's always, it could be subconscious, it could be very conscious, it could be overt, it could be covert, but there is something you're trying to achieve by talking, by doing things, by walking a certain way. That is why in the villages, for those who come from good villages, like some of us did, when you walk past certain boys who are sitting, if you are a girl, they interpret your walk, whether you are scared, whether you're what, because there's something that they will interpret. And for you, you have an objective that you want to achieve. The boys will whistle at you. They're not whistling just for the sake of whistling. They are whistling because they want to intimidate you to get your attention. There's always an objective. Then we have communication is two-way. Although we know you have intra, we are going to see, but even when you're talking to yourself, when you're having that meeting with yourself, it is two-way, except you are the one involved in the sending and the receiving. So every communication activity has a sender and a receiver. And when you engage in individual or intrapersonal communication, then you're in a self-reflection. And when you're in a self-reflection, you are also giving yourself feedback. This is a problem with the phone. Sorry, somebody is trying to cut my conversation by calling. Okay. Communication is two-way. Then the other one is communication is interactive. Whenever you send out a message, you elicit response. And the response you elicit should be the one that is desirable to you. It is your responsibility to make sure you elicit a desirable response to you. and you both take turns. The communicators take turn in the process. That is why it is interactive. Someone sent you a message and you respond by feeding back. And when you feed back, then you are in an interactive process. Without interaction, you will not know what the other person thinks or what the other person wants, and then there is no communication. Then communication is transactional. It is transactional. You guys are learning to be in the business industry or in the commerce industry or in what we call basically entrepreneurship industry in one way or another. Now, when you transact, there is the buying and the selling. In communication, the transaction is a negotiation process. You negotiate yourself into somebody's mind through a message. So you initiate a talk or a conversation, or you initiate communication by writing. But as you do that, you are persuading the other person to do something for you or to act in a certain way. That is a negotiated process. So it is transactional because you negotiate your way or your message or your idea or your attitude or your influence to the other person. And so they give you feedback based on your success rate. Let me use that one. They'll feedback positively or negatively based on how you have managed to negotiate your way into their mind or into their world or into their attitude. So you are always negotiating. When you're talking to someone, you are always negotiating a process. So that is why we call it a transaction. Then the other thing I want us to do today is the levels
Excuse me,
of
Dr. Elizabeth.
Yes.
Would you allow kindly me to seek for a clarification?
I was going to go back and allow you when I'm done with the next level, but it's okay. Can you?
In case of a monologue,
Mm-hmm.
will the three last characteristics apply?
Yes.
The two-way interactive and transitional.
Transactional, not
Transactional, sorry.
transition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's not use the word monologue because monologue is a bit of the theater thing. It's intrapersonal. Intra. You're talking to yourself. That's what you mean. Okay. Is that what you mean? Talking to yourself?
Yes, Dr.
Okay, now they will apply. Why? I'll give you a scenario. When you decided to apply for your university degree, how did you choose BCom as an option? How did you BCom as an option for you to pursue as a course?
Because
Just give me a minute. I have to stop some kids from making so much noise out here. Just give me a minute, please. Okay, sorry. I had to request children who are playing outside my house to go. Now, it is transactional. I was asking you, when you are making a decision and you're talking to yourself, and I'm just giving you a decision about having to join the university, you are engaged in convincing yourself about what you want to choose. You may not know, but you're negotiating with your mind. You're negotiating with your opportunities. You're negotiating with several things that you know in the environment, and it still remains transaction. And how are you interacting with yourself? You're interacting with yourself in the sense that Supposing I give you 1,000 shillings now and you're broke, you're damn broke, and you begin to mentally list the things that you need to do and prioritize. And one of the things that comes up top on the list is that you need to eat. You're hungry, you need to eat. The other thing that comes on that list is that you have other people who probably need that money at home, and many other bills that you need to pay. Maybe you owe somebody money,
Yes,
and you need
please.
to pay. You owe somebody some 100 shillings and you need to pay. And so
Excuse me,
you
madam.
begin
The volume is
to
down.
interact with yourself and ask, do I buy food first? Do I pay the money first? What do I do? And when you are done concluding what you want to prioritize, have you not interacted with yourself? Have you not elicited response for yourself? Have you not taken turns in your argument with yourself? So talking to yourself is actually engaging your internal self with the external self. You have a situation where you have split yourself into two. That is why you're talking to yourself. So external self is what affects you vis-a-vis what you feel or believe or want to do. In psychology, they have the ego, the id, the ego, and the super ego. Those are the mental states that people talk about in psychology. That at any given time in our lives, the id is the driver that makes you to fulfill your appetites, to make something now and have it over with. I want to eat, why can't I just eat? I want to walk, why can't I just take a walk? I want to go out and swim, why can't I just swim? I want to steal this money, why can't I just steal it? That is the id pushing you. And then with the ego is the rational. The ego begins to tell you, oh no, well, yeah, but why not do it? Why can't you do it? The id is pushing the ego to rationalize, to justify. But the super ego, which is the society, which is outside you, tells you, if you steal money, can you imagine going to jail for 1,000 shillings? And it is possible you can go to jail. Or if you eat this food now, if you buy chicken for 400 shillings from the restaurant and eat just a plate, if only you add 200, you'll buy a whole chicken and cook and have a leftover to eat tomorrow. So that is the super ego talking. So it doesn't matter whether you are talking to yourself, you're always in an interactive transactional mode. Did I answer you?
Yes, you did, Doctor. Thank you.
Who had asked that question? Are you answered? Was it Ian?
Yeah, yes, Doctor. Thank you.
Hello?
Hello,
Okay.
I can hear you.
Continue. Any other question now that he brought question? Any other question? Because today I want us to end this class at 10. Anybody with a question? A comment? Are you guys in class? Or you've gone to take tea?
Yes, we are, madam.
Yeah.
Are you in class or you've gone to take tea?
We are in class.
They're in class. They're around.
Ellie?
In class.
Bisa.
Yes. I'm back again. Madam, sorry, madam. Daktari.
Yes.
How
Ellie,
many characteristics have you told us?
how many characteristics have I told you? 7.
Yeah.
7.
I've told you 7 characteristics.
7.
Yes.
Hiyo ya mwisho umesema ni gani?
Please, Ellie, let's agree this class we speak in English. Transactional. Okay, let me go over them again. So just pay attention, and everybody please pay attention. Communication is a process. Communication is symbolic. Communication is contextual. Communication is purposeful. communication is two-way, communication is interactive, and communication is transactional. Ellie?
Yes.
Did you get that?
I've got you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
I've got you.
Anybody else who wants to say something? Ian, what do you want to say?
Oh, Doctor, I thought there was external noise and you didn't hear my response. I said that I understood.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, these are the problems we are having with
okay, the
working from
relations,
home.
the relations in terms of
In terms of?
the interpersonal communication characteristics are enhanced in a monologue.
Intra. We are going to see intra. This
Excuse
is
me.
intra, within you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to inquire, will we revisit the modules or
Yeah, the
we should
model.
do the research on our own?
No. I will share with you information, but I want you to also, it's an assignment, but I will give you a summarized handout on them,
Yes.
on all of. So I want it to be very clear. Each person will submit a write-up on the process models. And when you're doing that, you must ensure that you give a very clear information. Don't clutter it. Go straight to the key ideas around that model, and then the advantages and how you give an example of how it applies, either in the everyday life or in organizations. Give an example. That is where your assignment is, because this information is readily available. So you would only be, I want you to interact with it and present it. But what now you give in or put in as an individual is, can you apply Laswell's model, for example, in a specific context? Or can you apply Wesley's model in a specific context? Just a short example. Because unless we know, I'll give you an example. What does, because you're taking me back, but it's okay. Let's see, the ecological model. Is it the ecological model? Okay. Yes, I want to use the ecological model to give you an example. One of the key things about the ecological model is that messages are created and consumed using language. One of the key things about it is that messages are created and consumed using language. So language is the basis of messages. And it is a reflexive process, which means you become a creator when you respond or reply. So when, like now, we are in class, Ian, and I'm talking to you and you're talking to me. And as you talk to me, you are creating a message. So when you ask me a question, you have created a message. When I respond, I've created a message. Oh dear. Now who is doing that? If you're muted, please, we will not hear your noises in the background. So in this creation of messages, it's a continuous process where the initiator or the sender creates a message, and the person who receives the message also creates back a message, and relationships build out of this. So you can say that even when you're handling a business transaction, you propose or give somebody a price, or you quote a price, and the person begins to interact with you on basis of that price. And at the end of the day, what comes out is not just a purchase of a product. What comes out is a collection of information that enabled this person to purchase that product. And this person now becomes your customer, while you become the vendor, and therefore you have built a relationship. So that is how they say language is key or is central in creating and consuming messages. So I want you to be able to interact with that and see that the other thing about the ecological model that is very critical is that people interpret messages and they attribute meaning within their limits. It's like the way you interpret messages is based on your own imagination or your understanding of the message. And it can be very different from another person's message. And we know that every day you can say something very simple. You give a situation, you can say something very simple, but it creates a conflict because of the way I've interpreted it. And language impacts that, because if somebody says, I really didn't understand what you said. And then instead of me looking at it like you didn't understand, I think like you must have been joking when I was talking. Now you see we have already interpreted things differently and there's a conflict because of language. Okay, I hope you're satisfied or convinced. Let's move to the next thing, which is the levels of communication.
Hello, madam.
Who is that?
It's Rolex.
Hello?
Hello,
Yes, who is talking?
it's Rolex Achola.
Rolex, yes.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
What did you say is the assignment?
It's the same thing we are doing. We presented the process model.
Okay.
But I want you to input your own. I want to see Rolex in that assignment. And the Rolex I want to see is that you must use practical examples for each of the process models. Can you give an example of how that applies? And then the shortcoming of that model. Those are the things I'm trying to explain now, using ecological model. How does that process model apply in everyday experiences, whether it is in our own relationships within our communities or at the workplace? How does that apply? But because many of you or all of you haven't worked, I'm more interested in your community, in your family experiences and things like that. How does that model apply? So Rolex, did you get that right now?
I got it.
Yes,
Good.
Minor. Minor is not there. Sally Muni.
A question. What is the difference between Laswell model of communication and ecological?
You are checking us back because I gave you the research to do and I want you to come out with the answers. Then I will give a summary of all the models. But Laswell and ecological are the same. Because the ecological model is an elaboration of Laswell's model. Did you get that?
Yes.
Yeah. So the ecological model is an elaboration of Laswell's model. Any other question or comment?
Excuse please, madam.
Yes.
I was asking, will the assignment be submitted on the Google Classroom or the e-learning platform for UN?
I'm going to discuss that with the ICT people because we are currently experiencing some things which we have to think about. And I will advise, just do a good job, okay?
Yeah, thank you.
because even we have email. We can even create email, so it doesn't matter.
Thank you.
Yes. Audrey?
Excuse me.
Yes?
Are we doing are we doing the research on one process so that we submit one process, or we are doing the research of all the processes?
Because you're an individual, you cannot do one, you do all. This, and I've said, don't do like 10 pages. I'm saying, if you pick ecological, what are the key tenets? What are the key things of ecological model? If you pick Barlow, what is Barlow up to? What is he talking about?
Okay,
All of them, but the key things. You can draw the diagram and explain the diagram, but I don't need you to draw the diagram, but it's good if you want. Just explain what is Barlow's conceptualization of communication. Because almost all of them have the source, the message, the channel, and the receiver, isn't it? But we realize that in Barlow's thinking, feedback is not given prominence, or it is assumed. He assumes that feedback will happen without giving it a structural prominence. So you explain that, but then you say that according to Barlow, there are certain elements or certain components which are critical for communication to happen and to be effective. There are things around attitude, knowledge, social systems, cultures. Then you explain them. Then you move to Schramm, because I think I gave you 5. Were they 5?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I want you to understand them very well. In your own terms. Then when you get the summarized notes, then you sure not to forget what they are about. Because when we ask you in the exam, we don't ask you to recall the process model. We ask you to apply them. So understand them. Okay, can we now move to levels as we near the close of the class today? The levels of communication. There is intrapersonal, or within the self, what you guys were calling monologue, occurs within an individual in order to analyze, appreciate, or reflect upon something. Occurs within an individual in order to analyze, appreciate, or reflect upon a situation or something. And it has 3 aspects. It has 3 aspects. The self-concept.
Pardon? Madam?
It has 3 aspects. Intrapersonal is within an individual, and usually it is to analyze, appreciate, or reflect on something or a situation. And it has 3 aspects: the self-concept, perception, and expectation.
Pardon?
So the self-concept, you can pick them as we move on. The self-concept is also known as self-awareness. The self-concept is also known as self-awareness. Is concerned with our beliefs, our values, and our attitudes. The self-concept is also known as self-awareness and is concerned about our beliefs, our values, and our attitudes. Beliefs, what are beliefs? We just want to give them very simple definitions or distinctions. Beliefs or a belief is what holds as true or false. Beliefs are what hold as true or false, or as good or bad. Beliefs are what hold as true or false, or as good or bad. Values are the right and the wrong of things. Values are concerned with the right and the wrong of things or actions or ideas. So I hope you can see the link between beliefs and values. A belief is what you think is true or false, or is good or bad. A value is what is therefore right or wrong for you or for me. And then attitude is the predisposition toward or against something. Attitude is the predisposition toward or against something, whether a person or an idea. So that is attitude. So how do they connect with self-concept or awareness? That is a question. That's the elephant in the room. How do they connect with self-awareness? Whatever you believe, in other words, whatever you think is good or bad, or you think is true or false, will therefore make you know or decide whether it is right or wrong. And when you have decided whether it is right or wrong, then your attitude swings into action. You will like it or you will dislike it. You will look at it favorably or you will look at it in disfavor. So beliefs, values, and attitude influence behavior. That's the next thing that I want us to think about. That beliefs, beliefs, values, and attitude influence behavior, which is the spoken behavior or the action. Behavior here is the spoken or the acted behavior. And I also want you to look at another aspect that is affected by our beliefs, values, and attitude, the body image, especially for women. You know, now we were in a period where being skinny was the ideal for women, and men were just left there. Nobody cared whether a man looked like a mountain or a bag of potatoes or whatever it is, until it was clear that it is not about beauty, it is about health. That body size and all this is about health. Then men also became aware that they should train, they should be physically fit. They shouldn't just think that having a big tummy is a sign of money, and that a woman should not have a big tummy because it's a sign of being ugly. They discovered it's not about the physical appearance, it is about health and how that impacts on your health. So you see how now the attitude, the value, and the belief were connected to the body image of men and women, and girls and young men. If a young man has I'm sorry to use this, but it's what will make you understand. If a young man has some features which are girly, so to speak, then people begin to think about that young man differently because of the beliefs that a male should not look like this. So if you are a male, why are you looking like this? So the attitude sets in. So I hope that you understand about that, because we don't want to belabor it. So that is intrapersonal communication, talking to yourself. And now I hope your mind is opening up to know how all those characteristics of communication come in, even in the individual talking to himself or herself. Now we said perception and we said expectation. Now perception is the outward response to things, your outward response to the things you experience and encounter in life. Your outward response to the things you experience and encounter, and it is based on your self-concept. Your perception is based on your self-concept, which means it is based on your beliefs, it is based on your values, it is based on your attitude. So they feed each other. Self-concept feeds your perception. Because, as we have said, whatever you believe is right, is good or bad, influences whether it is right or wrong, and in turn influences what you feel about it. And it is what you feel about it, which is your attitude, that now outwardly expressed we call perception. Then expectation has to do with the future, and now why is Sanjay unmuted? You're causing echoes. Sanjay, please mute. And okay, the class is being recorded, so you can talk to Eric and get it after this. But still make your notes. Don't rely on the records, because there's a lot in that recording that may not be relevant to your notes. So we are saying expectation are a future-oriented roles and life scripts that you want to gain in life. It's the long term. Your expectation is the long term outcome of all the things we've talked about here. It's futuristic. The future here doesn't mean 10 years down the line. The future here is even an hour or a few minutes after your conversation. What do you expect? What should come out of it? What do you project? Actually, the right word is the projection of the outcome. What you project should be the outcome of the conversation you've been having with yourself, is the expectation. Okay, the next level is interpersonal. We have interpersonal, which occurs between two or more people who have relationships. Two or more people who have relationship. When two people are involved, it is called dyadic. Dyadic is D-Y-A, D-I-C. When two people are involved, it is dyadic. When more than two, it is group. Now, in interpersonal communication model, in the interpersonal communication process or model, relationships are built. Relationships are built. And there are several stages through which interpersonal communication happens or occurs. And these stages can be applied to personal friendships. These stages can be applied to personal friendships, romantic relationships, business encounters. These stages can be applied to personal relationships or personal friendships, romantic relationships, and business encounters. There is a scholar, don't write that like the way that, but just note that Mark Knapp, the spelling of Mark is, I'm sure we're all aware, but Knapp might be different. So Knapp is K-N-A-P-P, K-N-A-P-P. So Mark Knapp outlines the following stages. The initial encounter, number one is the initial encounter, which is an opportunity for first impression. The initial encounter is an opportunity for the first impression. I'm sure you've heard people say that the first impression is everything. That is true and also somewhat not true, but it holds a lot of weight in how you interact with people after. Because it is at the first impression that you have a chance to give the person a sneak preview of who you are. I like giving a very funny example to my students, and I'll give it to you too. It is always new whenever I give it, although it's a cliche to me who has given it over and over again, but I still like it. A young lady is approached by a gentleman, and they both agree to go out to dinner. So while out to dinner, while out on dinner, the lady who happens to come from a difficult background displays a behavior that ruins everything. And this is how. So they meet, so they exchange contacts, so they plan a date. And when they finally set up the date and they are at the dinner table, they place orders and food is brought. And when food is brought, the lady exclaims at the cost that instead of having to spend so much money on that food, why can't the gentleman give her the money? She really needs the money and she can use it better. Remember, we've been talking about how barriers exist that interfere with communication. And we've talking about we've just talked about the intra-personal, the self-awareness, and how self-awareness impacts on how you think about things and perception. So to her, she perceived, because of her own background, that this money, I might use it elsewhere. So why can't I just tell this guy, instead of looking at these prices of food and the money you're going to spend, give me the money, I need it. So the gentleman simply responded by saying that it was okay, they could eat, because it was his choice to bring her to that dinner. And then they can talk about, or they could talk about the rest after. So at the end of the dinner, this is a case study that is recorded in one of the books. So at the end of the dinner, the gentleman counted, let's say we eat at Kempinski, and maybe the cost of our dinner is, say, 15,000. So at the end of the dinner, I take 15, if I'm the gentleman, I count 15,000 shillings, I give to the lady and dial a taxi, a cab, that now we call Uber, and tell the person, take her to her destination, and once you're there, let me know, I will pay. That was the end of the relationship. They never, the gentleman never followed through to the next date. It ended there. Now I want to ask you, because I trust you're listening. What do you think made this man change his mind? What do you think made him act the way he acted? I need to see your hands up. Susan. Yes, Susan. Samuel. And then Ian.
Yes,
Can you
madam.
unmute and talk? Who is that?
I think the guy actually. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Let me mute. Now that you're talking, let me mute so that we hear you well. Okay, proceed.
Yes, I think the guy had to value the money up as of why the man decided that, okay, your problem is to have money. Let me give you money. Let me sort you go to your place. Then you do, because of that the girl had, he had to forget her because she didn't show the main agenda that they were going to be in. That's my thinking.
Thank you. Can we have Susan? Are you back? Is there some Susan really? Okay, let me. Ian?
Excuse me, madam.
Mm-hmm.
Which Susan? Because there are several Susans in this class.
The hands. You know, if you raise up your hand, I see your hand. So the one who has raised the hand.
Oh, okay.
But you can proceed if you have something to tell us. Ian, please, Ian, quickly. Let's do this and end the class. Ian.
In my own perspective,
And then after Ian, sorry, Ian, because I don't want to talk. I want to mute after this. So as soon as Ian stops talking, Samuel White, then after Samuel, Tychicus Mwangi, and then Collins. Quickly, 1 minute each.
in my perspective, I think the girl expressed to be cheap, and that's why guy didn't see her worth.
Thank you. Next.
My thinking is the guy thought the girl was a gold digger.
Thanks. Next.
Okay, I guess. Okay, I know. My understanding is that the first impression that the lady gave the man was that the lady was interested in money rather than the dating thing. So I guess that's why the man cut himself off from the dating thing.
Did you say cut himself off, Maureen? Sorry, that's funny. Cut himself off, Maureen.
I think the guy just left because he thought this girl was after the money and not the relationship.
I'm sure everybody wants to talk, but we will stop it there. Thank you. Initial encounter. You see, when you communicate interpersonally, you're building relationship, whether it is a friendship, and I've said it, whether it is romantic relationship, and even if it is a business encounter. So you're building relationship, and that initial encounter is very critical because people interpret moving forward your behavior, your intentions, and everything based on that. Then the next level, let's take it quickly now. The next level is experimenting. So there is the initial encounter, then the experimenting stage, where more information is exchanged on a variety of topics. The experimenting stage is where you exchange a variety of information. You become more revealing, you reveal more. So we are saying at the initial encounter, do not reveal too much. Talk about things which create an environment for you to interact further, but do not reveal too much. And then be positive in your initial encounter. And there is a caution, there are gender differences here. Researchers have discovered that a lot of women, because they are women, because of the nature of women, are likely to reveal too much about themselves on the initial encounter. That is why I gave you this thing, this case study. Women are more predisposed to reveal too much about themselves on the first encounter, and that ruins a lot of things. Men, on the other hand, calculate and measure the things they want to talk about, and you find that a man can, let me use the dating scene, a man can date a woman for years and the woman doesn't even know anything about him. And that is when you find some girls crying that the man loved them, and yet the man is like, I never did. A woman is fighting and doesn't know why the man has suddenly left. It's not suddenly. He was never there, except you didn't think. So those differences affect us very much. Okay? The gender differences. So if you are a woman, then you must be aware that you're more predisposed and you take more caution. And on the other side, you need to find out more about the man, because men are not likely to tell you more until you dig deeper. So girls and young men, or ladies and young ladies and young men, this is going to help you a lot also in interpersonal, in terms of personal relationships and friendships. Even friendships, you make friends when you come physically to the university. When you are making friends, don't be in a rush. Study everything carefully, because you might end up with a friend who is really a fakey. It's not really a friend. You must then end up in a business deal which is not genuine. It's a fake deal. The next, after experimenting, where you talk, you open up more or you reveal more, is intensifying. According to Knapp, according to Mark Knapp, the next step in interpersonal is intensifying. An intensifying stage, this is where things become clear that your relationship is worth pursuing. They are mutual. You have discovered some mutual interests. You've discovered some mutual benefits. You've discovered some, something mutual about the relationship, and you feel it is worth pursuing. And then the fourth level, or the next level, is integration. At integration level, decisions are now made. Decisions about whether I want to be your friend, decision about whether I want to commit to a romantic relationship, decisions about whether I want to close a business with you are made. Whether it is a partnership, whether I want to invest money, whether I want to purchase or buy the product you're selling, decisions are made at the at the integration level. So ladies and gentlemen, again, don't meet the opposite sex today and decide, oh, this is the love of my life, or this is, so you're already posting it on social media, all over. And then tomorrow when the love, supposed love of your life takes off, then you post again some other message on Facebook or on Instagram or whatever. You can see that playing out in the society. People rush to say things that they shouldn't have rushed to say. People rush to create boundaries they shouldn't have rushed to create. If somebody is for you, they'll be for you. You don't have to announce to the whole world that this is my girlfriend or this is my boyfriend. Wait until that level of integration. Am I clear on that? Young ladies and gentlemen. Can you unmute and tell me whether you have understood what I'm saying? Because this is now a life skill. Do not go and publicize your relationships before the level of integration.
Yes, exactly, never. So understood.
And don't be pushed by the boy or the man or the woman to announce and tell them, have a disclaimer. Have a disclaimer. Say to this person, I'm going into this to try and see if we can have a relationship, but don't put me on your timeline, don't put me on your status, don't put me on your Facebook, whatever. Don't, because you don't know where it's ending. It's better it ends on a good note for both of us, if it has to end. So when you have already put it there, oh, this is my bae, I don't know whether you call it boo or whatever it is, oh, this is my word, and then tomorrow things change, what happens? Remember, the internet does not forget. And when we want to deal with you, when one day you want to become our president, we round up all these people you kept posting, and then we ask you questions. A journalist comes and tells you, oh, Madam President, or Mr. President. What can you say about Mike? Just to jog your mind, Mike was your college sweetheart.
Lex unachoma.
But right now, he or she is like this, like that. Are you still together? Do you still communicate? What will you say? Somebody is saying unachoma. That's why you need to be very sure that you have reached the level of integration to try and you can close the relationship to make it public. The next level is bonding. The next level is bonding, where it is the final stage of a relationship and the relationship can now be made public. The bonding stage is the final stage and the relationship can now be made public. And what does it mean to be made public? You announce it. If it is a business contract, we know for sure that ICA has merged with Lion so that it is ICA Lion Group. It's a done deal. We are now sure that NIC has merged with CBA, Commercial Bank of Africa, and now it is called NBA. We are sure, we know. But before then, you don't make it public. When you introduce me as your best friend, every action can show that I am your best friend. We are sure. When you introduce me as your boyfriend, as your girlfriend, it is something that we can all relate with. We can relate to it and we can see you're really a boyfriend and a girlfriend. Any question, comments? One or two only. I will give Kiplagat because I found his hand up. And Eric Oyo. Is it Frederick Oyo? Kiplagat and Frederick Oyo, please, quickly. If you're not going to talk, I'll give it to the next person and please don't come back. And then I give it to Eric Isindu.
Okay, thank you, madam. The lesson was interactive, good. I've enjoyed the lesson. I have this request to make. I humbly request that you share the notes of today's session as a handout. Why do I say so? Some like me, we have been experiencing some technical network challenges that made us have incomplete notes. So sharing the notes will really help us so that we may have complete notes. Thank you and good day.
Yeah, thank you very much. I said that this is being recorded and so you can listen to it later. And then also handout that will boost our notes will also be shared on an appropriate platform. We understand. I know some of you keep dropping off because of internet. And we understand. Kiplagat dropped his hand. So Kevin. Do you still have Freddy Koyo? Okay. Kevin?
So I was asking, is the experimental under the levels of communication or under interpersonal level of communication?
Surely, Kevin, we left. This is not a level of communication. It is a level under interpersonal.
Yeah, thank you. I was seeking for clarification. Thank you.
Okay, we are under the second level. We had the first level is intrapersonal, in which we talked about the self-concept. You remember? And then we moved to the next level, which is interpersonal, which is between people, two or more. And I was talking about now how interpersonal communication process moves from the initial level to the point now you close or seal it through bonding. Is that okay?
Yeah, I got you. Thank you.
Okay. Now, I also want to say that much as we have outlined this, the reverse also happens. The reverse means the opposite of what has already been outlined there in interpersonal relationships or forming of interpersonal relationship. The reverse is differentiating, where instead of focusing like that case, you remember the case I gave you? The man differentiated, which means it, instead of making a first impression that moves to intensifying, to experimenting, sorry, it differentiated, their relationship differentiated because the man focused on the differences they had. The man looked at the lady and said, this is not the kind of thing I want. So there's differentiating. That is the reverse. Then, apart from differentiating, there is circumscribing, where they begin to minimize contact. You will have this note, don't worry, I just want you to listen. There's differentiating, there is circumscribing, where you minimize. So in differentiating, you notice your differences as opposed to noticing something you like about each other. In circumscribing, you minimize communication or contact. Then it moves to stagnating, where the relationship becomes like void. It's no longer working. It's no longer doing anything. Then in the next level is avoidance. You completely cease to see each other. And then the final stage is termination. So those levels of building interpersonal relationship have an exact opposite. Each of them has an exact opposite. The differentiating, circumscribing, stagnating, and avoidance, and finally terminating the relationship. Good. And then the next and the last level of communication is mass communication. Mass communication. And Little John and Foss, there are some scholars called Little John and Foss. So Little John and Foss define mass communication as the process whereby media organizations produce and transmit messages to large publics, and the process by which those messages are sought, used, understood, and influenced by the audience. So it is a technology-mediated public communication between an entity and large audience. It's a technology-mediated public communication between a large entity, between an entity and a large group. The group is usually heterogeneous. The group is not homogeneous, but heterogeneous. So that is mass communication. Large audiences. The audiences have diverse characteristics. That is why they are called heterogeneous. And and mass communication is normally mediated by technology, which means technology is used to send this message to the audiences out there. Okay? So those are the levels, the 3 levels of communication that I want. Yes.
Namaliza ya kwanza haikuwa mbaya.
Who is talking now? Who is talking now? Eric, please mute that person. Now, the last thing I want to say is that as part of understanding interpersonal communication, there's what we call the Johari window. And the Johari window, just for your own good, I want you to study the Johari window. The Johari window, I want to say the following about it. It was developed by two psychologists, John Luft and Ingham. In fact, the word Johari is from an acronym of their names. But what is important to us about the Johari window is that it looks at ourselves in the manner of a window, the panels of a window. So there are 4 panels or panes, the window panes as we know them. The traditional way of windows, you know, a window has panes. So the 4 panes represent somebody. And in that somebody, there's the known self, the one that is known to everybody. It is known to you and it is known to the rest. It is the open window. So that is something that people know about you. You also know it. You have exposed it there. There's nothing you can do about it. The open self is what people can see, like your physical appearance, like what you do, like your social condition. That is the open self. Then there is the hidden self. The hidden self is what is only known to you, but is not known to others. Your hidden self is only known to you, but is not known to others. And others can only access it when you tell them. If you open up, if you give them access. And how do you give people access to your hidden self? It is called self-disclosure. So this is where the crux is. You cannot build an effective interpersonal relationship without self-disclosure. And as I said earlier, because of gender differences, women tend to disclose earlier than men. They are predisposed to say so much about them compared to men. Now, self-disclosure must be reciprocal for relationships to be effective, to be genuine and mutually beneficial. When you tell me about yourself and I don't tell you about myself, the relationship will collapse one way or another. But we must be careful how we disclose, when to disclose, and what to disclose at what level. You shouldn't disclose too much at the initial stage. And what are we talking about as being hidden? What is hidden here are your secrets. What is hidden here are your hopes. What is hidden here is your fantasy about life. Some people will use your secrets against you, even if they are your friends. So don't tell them about your secrets. Some people will dislike you because of you are too ambitious, your hopes, your fantasies. This is a dreamer. You remember for the Christian, you know how Joseph was telling his brothers about his dreams and they hated him to the point of wanting to kill him? So you should be careful how you disclose the hidden self. Now, there's another self which is blind. The blind self is not known to you as an individual, but it is known to others. So it is at the blind self that we encounter appraisal, peer appraisal, or appraisal just from anybody else. It is the things that people see in you, but you're not aware that you have them, whether they are positive or they are negative. And there's nothing you can do about it because people see these things based on their own worldview and based on social conditions around us. So people may think that you are trustworthy, but you didn't ever think about yourself as trustworthy. And on the negative, people might think that you are, yes? Why don't you let me finish this conversation, then you can ask a question. So the blind self is what people know about you, but you're not aware. And based on that, they will appraise you. They will make decisions about you, whether those decisions are for you or against you, but they will make them. because they have something about you which you're not aware of. And then there's one that is called unknown. The Johari window talks about ourselves, that there's a point in us or a place in us which is not known. And this encompasses the untapped potential, the undiscovered interest. I'll give you an example. You come to the university, you graduate, you have no job. And because of conditions around you, because of the suffering around you, you begin to think about how you can make life happen for you. You discover that you had things in you which you've never known. So the unknown is not known to you at the surface, and it's also not known to other people at the surface. It is unknown. But when you experience certain extreme conditions, then you discover them. So you discover the unknown in you. And that is where innovation happens. Innovation happens in your unknown self, the untapped potential, the undiscovered talent, the undiscovered interest. It is in the unknown. So in becoming self-aware that we were talking about up there, the Johari window helps you a lot to unpack the open, the hidden, the blind, and the unknown. So if you have questions, now you can ask. Any questions, any comment? Because I wish to end the class there for today. And next week we will start on something else.
Excuse
We'll
me, Dr.
conclude and start on something else. Yes? Yes, go ahead. Who is that? Can you go ahead?
Excuse Dr.
Oh gosh. Yes, go ahead.
Which was the expected response to person, intra-person, about the girl and the lady who are on a date?
What expected response?
About
No,
the
I was just telling you how in your building of interpersonal relationship, whether it is friendship, romantic, or business, when you make a wrong first impression, you ruin everything. Which means at the first initial encounter, do not reveal too much. So because she revealed too much about herself, the gentleman perceived that, as you guys give various responses, that she is not interested in him, but in the money. So the gentleman gave him the money's worth and sent her packing. Now, let me use business because personal relationships seem to be rather obvious and what. Let me use business. And we are not talking about business of me buying a product from your shop. Business in terms of sealing a business deal, a partnership, an investment, something huge. And so you come with a business idea and you're talking to me about the business idea. If you rush into telling me everything, including profits and everything that will come out of it, and I begin to unpack you by asking you certain questions, if you can't answer those questions effectively, there's no business deal that I'm going to have with you. I will not have with you a business deal, because then I will discover loopholes. So even as you go out to share ideas with people, you must know what is critical to making them understand what you want and leave the rest until you have reached a point where you think this person is interested, and then now you can bring the rest of the information. So the gentleman acted, because you cannot control my actions. You can only control your actions. And that's why we are saying we must take precaution when building interpersonal relationship. You cannot go back and tell me, you misunderstood me. It's only that I was hungry. I needed money so much. I don't care. I have perceived you in one way or another, and that's it. That's the point we are raising here. Any other? Okay, if there's no any other comment or question, I wish to stop here, and we will communicate through your class president on notes, handouts, or notes as you call them. We will also communicate on how you submit, how and when you submit that assignment that I have given you. And then I hope moving forward, we will have a more interactive class, because the more we interact, the more we learn. Otherwise, have a good day and have a good week. Thank you very much.
Good day to you, madam.
Good day.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Kelvin.
Yes, please.
Atoboi.
Kelvin.
Au Freddy. Wanaweka mimi nilikuwa najua atutoboi.
Thank you.
Aye.
Alafu ase ile so next tushaisoma sijui introduction of business.
Kelvin.
Lakini leo ni nini mbaya shwari? Leo ni nini mbaya shwari?
Mom, my next okay. Nusu kwa dari moja. Sima. We klasi imeisha.
Ni lecturer tunangoja akuje. Bado mwalimu anaendelea kufunza.
Stop it.
Ulisikia wapi? Ulisikia wapi? Ulisikia wapi? Ulisikia
Ulisikia wapi?
Hizo nishaisha.
Kweli Musa, uliponioa sura yangu haikuwa na alama hata moja. Nilikuwa na afya nzuri, nilinona kama ngoima ya kirike. Musa ndugu, kweli Musa, uliponioa sura yangu haikuwa na alama hata moja. Nilikuwa na afya nzuri, nilinona kama ngoima ya kirike.
Njao. Yeah, bye. Okay. Lea hapa juu. Ready ai. Đi mi sushi à có đủ mê kia bạn. Ready.